Hello, everybody. Brian Neubert here from GoldandBlack.com, here with my daily effort once again to make damn certain that you know every single day what shirt I'm wearing. This is your GoldandBlack.com Purdue Basketball Daily. You might ask why I'm doing this after the sun has gone down for the day. It's because A, it's that time of year where the sun starts going down at like 4 o'clock, and B, today is the start of the basketball signing period. That is today's topic, and I wanted to afford time for some other things to fall into place should they have decided to fall into place on this given day. They have not yet fallen in place, so we're just going to proceed without it. So Purdue signs 5 players today. They're hoping for a 6th, as perhaps you've heard. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But you got your. I'm going to try to do this alphabetically, but this is a surprisingly alphabetically bunched up class. So it all kind of runs together right there at the front end of the alphabet. You got your Jack Benner, you got your Raleigh Burgess, you got your Canon Catchings, you got your C.J. Cox, and you've got your Daniel Jacobson. So Jack Benner to start off, since he's BE. A guy that is your typical guy that Purdue's won a lot of games with. Players like him have had a lot of success at Purdue. He's a 6'4" shooting guard, can play probably both perimeter positions. Outside of point guard, I mean the 2 and the 3. He's a good shooter. He's an excellent offensive basketball player. He can handle the ball. He can really pass. He's got high IQ. And the cops are coming for me. Purdue's won a ton of games with that type of guy. The sort of guy who just sets foot on the floor and makes you a better offensive basketball team because he knows what he's doing. He's smart. He's unselfish. Dakota Mathias-ish. I don't know if he's that level of shooter quite yet. He's a good shooter. He's a multi-level shooter. He's more physical, I think, at this point than you'd expect from a player of that category. At the same time, still needs to work on his body a little bit, get a little bit stronger, things like that. But somebody who's going to be could be a very important offensive piece for Purdue moving forward over the long term. Probably not somebody you have to rush to the floor right away in his career, but somebody who in time is going to be a guy who has a chance to really, really help Purdue from an offensive perspective. Raleigh Burgess, moving on to the BU in the class. A big guy who can play the 4 and the 5, kind of similar to Caleb First in that sense. Big kid, really big kid. I haven't seen him play as much because he was hurt in the spring. I saw him last summer. I saw him this summer. And he is legit big. He is all of 6'10". Looks like he's still growing. Plays really hard. Plays with a lot of energy. Again, very Caleb for First-ish in that regard. Can really shoot the basketball. Is a good 3-point shooter. A guy who I think you want to be shooting threes. And it's not just one of those deals where he can, so when the opportunity presents itself under certain circumstances, you can do it. I think he's a legitimately good 3-point shooter. I think he's a guy who can, stretch the floor for Purdue moving forward, either from the 4 or the 5. Somebody, again, you might not have to rush them to the floor, so you can give him a little bit of time. Probably. He's coming back from major injury. He played in the summer, but just kind of a little bit. Big season ahead for him to kind of get back in the swing of things and things like that. But, a versatile, energetic front court piece for Purdue, similar to a lot of what they've won with. Again, a lot of these guys are kind of central casting Purdue guys in that sense. Kanon Catchings, I guess, is next, right? Yes, Catchings comes before Cox. Kanon obviously is a really, really promising prospect. I was convinced he was a big-time player before most people even saw him. Just a really, really tall, really, really long, very, very skilled 2, 3, 4 sort of player. I think he can go a lot of different ways. I think he's going to be tall and long enough to be a stretch 4 should his body go in that direction, or should Purdue directionally go in that direction from a basketball perspective, or he can be that classic big pterodactyl of a wing, or even a gigantic two guard. He's tightening up his ball handling a little bit. Still has a long ways to go there. Still has to grow into his body, but he's going to be really, really tall, really long, and he is a big time shooter, and he has gotten a lot better. And I haven't seen him in the last couple months because he's down at Overtime Elite in Atlanta now. But he's gotten a lot better at creating space for himself with his dribble to get into his pull-up. He makes shots, contorting his body in the air. He makes shots on the move. He just does a lot of different things as a scorer. He can beat you off the dribble. He can finish around the basket acrobatically. He can play above the rim a little bit. Defensively, there's no reason he can't be a good player. Just a big-time prospect with as high a ceiling as probably anybody Matt Painter's ever signed. Ceiling. I'm not saying he's as good as anybody Matt Painter's ever signed, but he's got as high a ceiling as anybody Matt Painter's ever signed. I always say about the children of pros, and his mother is Taja Catchings, who was a really, really good women's basketball player at Illinois, former Chicago Miss Basketball, played in the WNBA. She is the sister of Tamika Catchings. Canon Catchings' grandfather played in the NBA, Harvey Catchings, many, many, many years ago. Pros tend to beget pros. That they have a little something about them typically that lends itself well to getting better, to putting in work, to understanding what it takes. I think Canon Catchings is a little bit in a situation where he's still very much maturing, growing up. Things like that. I'm guessing the time in Atlanta will probably be good for him in that regard, striking out on his own for the first time in his life. And, prep school normally helps kids in that regard. And, Overtime Elite's not a prep school, but it's away from home. It's a basketball structured environment, and it's a highly competitive environment. So he will get better this year, I'm quite certain. And he will get better when he gets to Purdue in year one. He will get better when he gets to Purdue in year two, and so on and so on and so on. What he'll be in 4 years might be completely unrecognizable to what he is right now. I think he is that promising of a prospect. And I think a lot of people just missed the boat on him in recruiting. I just missed the boat. I think he was the classic example of a player coming along at a time when a bunch of programs are just content to go buy 23-year-olds out of the transfer portal with their NIL money instead of actually dedicating some developmental time to players. And I think that, the timing was perfect. He was sold on Purdue from day one. He kind of had to work through some things in that regard as time went on, having committed so early, but he's obviously all in on Purdue, and Purdue's thrilled to death to have him. And he's a guy who can make an instant impact for them next year, or just kind of ease into things next year and then be a big time player as a sophomore. If you ask me, I mean, it's way too early to be projecting these things, but I need something to talk about. So that's what I'm talking about. CJ Cox, I think, was sort of a guy who really, really established himself relatively late in the process. You never want to conflate someone getting picked up late in the process with being a quote-unquote plan B. But I think Purdue found him in the summer and saw in him everything that it really wanted in another guard. They need ball handlers next year. You're going to have to replace Lance Jones. You're going to have to replace Ethan Morton, most likely. And you just need to replenish your ball handling ranks. You're left with Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, but you need more ball handlers. And that was a big emphasis for Purdue in this class. CJ Cox is that one of those guys. He's kind of a combo guard sort of guy who can play the point, who can guard the point, but also maybe can play off the ball a little bit, can make shots. Another multi-level shooter who by reputation has a bit of a defensive mentality. He's a bigger kid than most guards of that category. I've always kind of put him in the Eric Hunter bucket. Again, I just put players in buckets. They must be large buckets. I've always put him in that sort of category, but he's obviously bigger and more physical and stronger than Eric Hunter was at this stage of his career. maybe a better shooter. I don't know. I've just seen film. I just know of his reputation. I know he can make shots off the dribble. I know he had a big end of July, and he did it against good competition. I think that, and I don't want to slight other recruits here when I compliment C.J. Cox, but Purdue took C.J. Cox before longtime target Travis Perry had a chance to decide. And so those two here are inextricably kind of linked together from an analytical point of view here when talking about this class. I do think, while Travis Perry was a very good player, he's going to be a solid college player. He would have been a good fit at Purdue. He was so much of what Purdue looks for in players. I do think C.J. Cox is probably a little bit of a better fit for what Purdue needs right now in terms of maybe being a little bit better suited to defend at a high level right away, but also somebody who might have a little bit more of a defensive mentality as well as a little bit more size and strength and quickness, kind of things like that. So C.J. Cox is a guy who, again, Purdue may or may not have to rush this guy to the floor. It's all pretty theoretical right now, kind of looking down the line at what Purdue's roster is going to look like here. It's kind of the nature of things for everybody right now. But C.J. Cox obviously checked a lot of boxes for Purdue in terms of what it looks for in its backcourt, and the backcourt is a big need next year. Daniel Jacobson, I think this is the guy who took this from a really good class, assuming something else falls into place here from here on out. He's the guy who took this from a really good class to a great class, because you've got a guy who's 7'2" at least, who can really, really, really shoot the ball, who is a year young for his grade, basically, just cut a whole year out of his development, meaning when he gets to Purdue, again, another guy Purdue might not have to rush to the floor. So here comes this developmental year in some capacity, whether that's improving as he plays or whatever the case may be. This is a guy whose body's going to fill out, who's going to keep getting more and more fluid as an athlete, who's going to get more athletic, a little quicker, a little faster, things like that. But he's 7'2". He's not Zach Edey, Isaac Haas 7'2". He's more, I don't want to say Matt Harms because he's not going to be as quick. But he is you could put him in a grainy video prior to the NBA draft and say he's from Kazakhstan or whatever, and show film of him, and you would think this guy's like a first-round draft pick, because the way he shoots, the way he moves, things like that, he can really shoot. You do not find guys this big who have the shooting motion he has, the fluidness as a shooter that he has. He's going to be huge. I haven't seen him play live. I haven't seen him do a lot of other things other than what I've seen on video, but he's got a soft touch around the basket. He's a great shooter from the perimeter, and he moves really well. So Purdue's got as good a reputation, as good an infrastructure as anybody in terms of developing guys like this at center. And this is as high. I just said this about Canon Catchings, but this is as high an upside guy as can be imagined, because Purdue's going to turn him into one of these giants in the post once again. They're going to teach him how to play in the post. If he doesn't know how to already, I can't really comment on that because I haven't seen him. But he's a guy they're going to play through on the inside. He's a guy who can step out and shoot threes. And again, you're going to want him shooting threes. And he's just going to be really good, if you ask me, just based on the raw materials. I don't know. You can never predict too far out with these guys, because you never know what's going on upstairs, what's going on in their hearts, whatever it might be. Whatever problems they're going to encounter at some point. There's just so much that goes into projecting high school basketball players to the college level, especially when you haven't seen them play live and you haven't really gotten to know them or the people around them all that well. But just watching him on video, it's just no-brainer. And the guy who takes this from a very good class to a great class, provided if something else falls into place. Some common denominators here, other than most of these guys being strangely alphabetically bunched together. I think the big thing that stands out is that they all can shoot, all of them. C.J. Cox is a shooter. Canon Catchings is a shooter. Raleigh Burgess and Daniel Jacobson both positionally are really good shooters. Positionally. Doesn't mean they're not good shooters, period, but you don't find 6'10", 6'11", or 7'2" guys who shoot threes the way those guys do. You can do a lot of different stuff with that, obviously, and put a lot of pressure on defenses that way. But also a testament to, one of Matt Painter's ultimate mandates in recruiting is shooting. And so far you're 5 for 5 on shooters. If 6 for 6 materializes, as you've probably figured out by now if you pay any attention whatsoever, the thing that I was hoping would fall in place today for the sake of this video is Jakari Harris. He is not yet decided as far as I know. At least he's not announced. So Purdue's waiting on him just like they have for the last couple months. I would anticipate that going Purdue's way, but they ultimately have to say it out loud, and that's not happened yet. But if Purdue gets him, that's 6 for 6 on big-time shooters. Because everything I've seen from Jakari Harris live, I've seen him 2 summers in a row. He's a really, really good shooter. I always compare him to like Keaton Grant after he figured out his jumper at Purdue and he started making threes. Although I think Harris is maybe a little more pure as a shooter, but he is a big guard who's hard to get around, who's going to play really hard, who's going to be really physical, who's going to really take defense seriously, who can play a couple different positions, including handle the ball like a point guard. I don't think it's his natural position, but I think he's one of those combo guards who, can give you that second or third ball handler. Something that's really important right now. Lance Jones is really, really making Purdue a better offensive basketball team because you have another primary ball handler type out there. And it's just really important that Purdue get ball handlers for next season, shooters for next season, and that this class just turns out as good as it looks on paper. I think this is a better class than it'll probably rank. I'm saying that as a guy who's seen most of them play live. I think that when you have this many guys in a class, you can't not ask it to be a foundational class for your future. 6 guys is half your team. Now, I don't anticipate this remaining a 6-man class from year 1 to year 4. Things happen. Purdue, may or may not stagger some of these scholarships a little bit because you do not want to be in a situation 4 years from now where you have to go get 6 more guys. Kind of the nature of recruiting nowadays is just to adjust as it goes, and that's what Purdue did here. Daniel Jacobson popped up as a 2024 option relatively late in the process, and Purdue was willing to oversign to do it. So Purdue will, if this other thing falls in place, Purdue will be 1 scholarship over. That's going to have to sort itself out. There's plenty of time for that to happen, one way or the other. But if you're asking me how it's going to happen, I don't know. It's too early to tell. I don't want to speculate. The internet can run wild about it. This guy's going to transfer, that guy's going to transfer, or this guy's going to prep school, that guy's going to prep school, whatever it might be. But it's just too early to know. And these things really do often sort themselves out. So, there we have it. I've covered the other thing that might fall in place here already, so I might not have to follow up on that. So this was long today, but it was long for good reason because this was an important story and a lot of guys, and this is going to serve as basically what I did today. Stay tuned to GoldandBlack.com tomorrow, Thursday. I'm going to get comments from all the coaches on these guys. And that's always something that I know people are looking forward to hearing. So that's what I got for today, and we will talk to you again tomorrow about what I have no idea. So thanks, everybody.